to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we made it. We're on the final book of the Dirty Billionaire series by Megan March. If you haven't already listened to the first two books in the series, which are The Dirty Billionaire and Dirty Pleasures, those links are going to be down below in the description section. Once you finish with those reviews, come and join us as we jump into the final book, which is called Dirty Together. Holly's back in Goldhaven, Kentucky, and she's getting gas. And when she goes to start up her Firebird, it won't start. So right next to the gas station, there's this car garage, and she hears music playing. So she goes over, and she turns off the music. And so the guy yells, like, who the hell? Like, who the hell is this? And then he sees Holly. So we find out that the guy is called, his name is Logan Brantley, and that she used to have like this major crush on him in high school. He's like a couple of years older than her. He apparently owns the garage now. And of course, he's like, what are you doing here? She tells him that her car won't start, and he starts naming like these different luxury cars. He's like, oh, I bet you have a Lexus. He's like, you know what? You probably have a Bentley. And he's like, you were always classier than the other girls. Logan was like a playboy back in the day, and so he used to have like all the hot girls riding in his Camaro. So he sees the Firebird, and he's like, what the hell? And he even mumbles something about a no good husband. So he checks her car. He tells her it's probably the starter. She gets her purse. She's ready to start walking home to her granny's house, which is her house now. So she's getting ready to walk home. And he's like, what are you doing? And so she's already on edge. So she spazzes out a little bit. And she tells him, if I have to listen to another person trying to tell me what to do, like, I'm going to lose it, And so he tells her, I was just going to offer you a ride because it's cold out. That's it. So she gets into his truck. It's like a brand new truck, nice truck. He takes her home, and they talk a little, and she says how everything just got so big so fast, and she just needs some answers and felt like home would give them to her. So he tells her, be ready at 8 p.m. because he was going to show her her roots. So Logan comes back, and since she left the door unlocked, he comes into her bedroom and tells her, get up, get dressed so they can go. So which is, to me, is crazy that, but it's a small town. So I guess, that trust factor is there so they can leave their doors open, but still. So she finally caves, and they go to the burger joint, and then they go to the bowling alley, which is where she used to work. So she decides to get drunk since she keeps thinking and doesn't want to think at this moment. So she drinks shots of tequila, sings about 2 songs. Someone yells out, you want another shot? And she gives a thumbs up. Then she hears a familiar voice say, I think you've had enough, my dear. So our boy Creighton shows up, and the crowd yells for like one more song. And so then she starts singing Fancy by Reba McEntire, which is clearly directed to him. Love that song. That's a great song. So then after the song, he picks her up and is taking her outside when Logan approaches and basically says, I don't think she wants to leave with you. So Creighton's looking at him like, the fuck? This is my wife. So he takes her outside, puts her in the rental car, and him and Logan are kind of going back and forth. So then Holly gets this look of like she's about to puke. So Creighton rushes over to open the door and let her puke it out. So then Logan was like in the middle of giving him directions to her house. I still want to say her granny's house because that's how she says it. So he's about to give directions to her granny's house, and then the old man that owns the bowling alley, I think his name's Benny, he comes outside with Holly's purse, and he gives Creighton, the directions. So then the Benny guy warned him, if you hurt her, he'll take him out. So he apparently had got the same info from the same threat from Boone Thrasher, because when he was trying to find out where she had probably gone, he had told her she more than likely went back home, and sure enough, that's where she was. So the Logan guy has this big smirk on his face as Creighton and Holly speed off. So she wakes up and says, thanks, Logan, and then she hears Creighton's voice say, Logan didn't help you. So she looks at him all confused because last night's a blur. And he tells her, you know how fucking pissed that makes me that you thought another man would be in your room this morning, Holly? And she doesn't say anything and starts to dry heave. Those are the worst. They hurt. It's like crunches. Those are the worst. So then she goes to take a shower because his intense stare is like throwing her off. So she goes to take a shower, and when she comes out, all she sees is a note on the table that says 2 words. He literally wrote 2 words. So she freaks out and starts thinking that he's left and trying to, and he's trying to get back at her. So she sends him text messages. But the good thing is that her mind now thinks she's not done with him. And this time she's going to track him down. Which is crazy. Like, she was like full force texting him like, how could you do this? How could you just leave and not say anything? And she had just done this. But it's almost like him leaving her. It's like, I think it's probably like a product of how her mother is. Like how her mother chases men. So it's like, that's what she kind of knows. Like, oh, now we'll try and fight. I don't know. It's just weird. But that's what she does, right? So then Logan comes over, and he's coming over to check on her. And he tells her that, he just calls him by his last name, Karis. He's like, he's at the Piggly Wiggly. And Holly, of course, is like, he's where? So then Creighton pulls up. He has groceries in the trunk and tells Logan to come help bring in the bags before Holly tries to do it herself. So then Creighton's walking in, and she turns too fast and she almost falls, but he catches her. So he apparently is going to stay as long as Holly wants to. And all she can think is she's never had anyone kind of like put aside everything for her. And I'm kind of like, did you not see him do that on the tour? You know what I mean? Like, he stayed on the tour. So, but, I digress. But that just kind of shows you how fucked up her mindset is. So then Logan tells her that she'll need the Firebird to be running if she's going to sell it. And Creighton's like, sell it. But Holly's like, I haven't made up my mind yet. So then Logan is like, well, it sounds like a domestic dispute, and yells out, see you around, Karis. They're in the kitchen, and he tells her, it isn't fun being left with no explanation, is it? And she's like, no, it's not. She kind of drops her head. So he tells her, don't you run again. If you have a problem and feel the need to run, you talk to me. And she agreed. So he tells her she is the most important thing in his life and that he fucking loves her. And he literally said it like that, which is so sweet. Because he's so intense, So it's like he couldn't say a basic, I really love you. He's like, I fucking love you. So she's like, what did you say? And he said it again. And he was like, I fucking love you. And she was stunned and was about to say something, but he told her, don't say it until there is no hesitation. Then he gives her the sweetest kiss, and it just turns her on completely, and she is completely ready to ravish the man. So then Creighton starts eating her pussy and then fucks her hard, and he tells her, don't you fucking run again. And so she's getting banged, and of course she's screaming out, I won't, I promise. So afterwards, they're cuddling, which is something he never does. And he asks her about, showing her the other place where she grew up. And it was a place called Happy Meadows, which isn't far away from where her granny's house is. But she doesn't want to take him there because it was where her mother was like sleeping with different men. And it's just a painful memory. Like, she didn't even date until she was in high school because she was afraid of being thought of as her mother. So she moved in with her gran when she was about 14 years old. That is, I was thinking maybe she had gone to stay with her grandmother a little sooner, but for her to go 14, she went 14 years with the fuckery of her mother. No wonder the poor girl is damaged. It makes even more sense because it's like being stuck with the awful parent for 14 years. That just had to be awful. So then she asks him about his childhood, and he tells her the story of how his parents were missionaries in New Guinea and that they were taken out while he was off with a friend and his friend's father. So apparently 15 people were taken out because it was a witch hunt. And yes, they apparently still do this, which is crazy. So he was sent to live with his uncle and his aunt. And the uncle actually asked if there was another missionary family that would take them. And he heard it. So the aunt, however, she fell in love with Greer, his younger sister, because apparently she wanted a daughter more than she thought. But when he was shipped off to boarding school. So she starts crying, and he tells her, don't cry for me. And basically he's like, the lives we led us on the path to find each other, and I'll never be sorry for that. So then they kiss and they make love for the first time. So they spend that whole day in bed, and she couldn't even remember how many orgasms she had. The next day he retreated to the extra room in the back of the house. She stuck to the kitchen and worked on writing some songs. So he gives her this leather journal, and he had it engraved with Keeper of Beautiful Songs. And he had done it at the store while he was chatting with like the local woman. I think her name was like Mrs. Maynard. I think I said it wrong. But after a while, she goes in to the back room and she gets on her knees and she starts giving him a blowjob while he's on the phone. So he starts saying shit on the phone like, "Oh fuck," and then he was like, "I wasn't talking to you." So then finally he gets off the phone and he like comes down her throat, and a little later he hands her a flyer about this Winterfest that they have locally, and he wants to go. So he really wants to understand like everything about her life in this city that she grew up in, which is, I think, is sweet. So they go to the A&W, which is like an hour away. They have some burgers, cheese fries, root beer. They go to the Winterfest. Logan walks up, gives Creighton a cold beer. They chat for like a little minute. Then he walks off to go line dance with a woman. They were there for just like a little bit because she tells him how she's ready for him to conquer a new space since she has a big butt plug in her. And then he picks her up, carries her to the car, and even made the statement that he was just a crazy man in love with his wife when he picked her up and took her out. So she gives him a blowjob in the car and tells him his job, before she gives it to him, she's like, his job is just to get him home, which he does. He comes down her throat. So then they get inside and he asks her if she's sure, and she's like, she is. And he starts saying fate brought them together and all these sweet things. She gets inspired and is like, give me like 2 minutes. So she doesn't know if it was like 10 or 15 minutes, but when she looks up, Creighton's like stroking his dick and he's staring at her. And she's like, what? And he's like, that is the sexiest thing ever, just to watch you in your zone. So then she asks him, how do you want me? And he has her bend over with her ass facing him. He goes to get some lube. He takes out the butt plug and he eases into her. He rubs her clit, and that makes her want more of him and her. They, of course, both have these like incredibly intense orgasms. Afterwards, he says to her that they will look at places in Nashville, and then that way they can float between both, New York, NYC, and Nashville, because he has business that he'll have to be in New York for, so he can't just get rid of the penthouse. And this made her happy because he was trying to make her comfortable. And I like that, and I think also with her mother dragging her from place to place, she wants something solid. And even if it's 2 homes you have or whatever, if you know that's your home, it's a different type of situation. Her mother really effed her up. So then they play dirty Scrabble, have a great time. The next day she hears him on the phone, and she had like nothing on but his t-shirt and some socks. And she figured she would just like bend over to distract him. But what she heard was him saying, I know I need to be there, but Holly's more important. And then he looks and sees Holly and says, I'll call you back. So he told her, sometimes I have to be back in NYC. This is one of those times. But if I leave, then I'm not showing you that you're the most important thing. And she tells him, you've already done it. Go handle what you need in New York, and I'll stay here a couple more days to fine-tune some songs, and then I'll head to Nashville. So she kept the rental car. I think it was like a Cadillac. And he was like, when she asked to keep it, he's like, of course, sure. So he also told her that he was going to get her a new car, and this time she didn't trip too hard because she knew it was out of concern and not control. So then she takes him to the airport and wanted to ask him what was going on because she could tell something was, but she didn't ask him. But I thought that was super, you know, sweet of her as well, to understand that him going back to New York was in no way a reflection that, oh, he doesn't care about you. It's just the man has like a fucking empire to run, and he's got to be able to run it. So I was glad she was understanding, because I do feel like the way he had been with her, it was starting to kind of sink in that, okay, maybe he really does feel this way. Maybe this is really what he wants. So Creighton sends her gifts. He sends her 2 more journals that he had Miss Maynard engrave. And then he also had Benny, the bowling alley guy, give her some bowling shoes that I think had her initials engraved on them, and a pink glittery bowling ball. And he had a note attached that said, you know, in case you get bored, you can go bowling and give another impromptu concert. So she hears another knock, and this time it's her mama. So Creighton's in New York. He calls Holly, and she tells him she'll call him right back. And he can tell something's wrong, but Holly won't say what it is. And he, you know, gets off the phone. He's like, I love you, but she didn't say it back. She's like, I'll call you back. So then he's really kind of worried, right? So then he goes to have a drink at the bar with his sister, Greer. And she wants to know when she's going to be able to meet Holly. And he's like, soon. So she told him that she watched Country Dreams. So she knows that, you know, she's super talented. Then Creighton realizes he hasn't seen any episodes of that show. So he calls Cannon, and Cannon is like, you interrupted me for that? He's like, I've already sent you all that information in the first email, you know, when you had me do all the digging. So he walks his sister home. And then, because she normally is like, oh, I only live 3 blocks away, so she'll walk by herself. And he's like, that is not cool. Like, you got to stop doing that. Like, you need to take a car, or I'm going to have to put a bodyguard on you. So he walks her home, and then he goes home and he watched the show, and he was so entranced, and he felt like nothing needed to change about her. Like, because you could kind of see the changes in her as far as like maybe fashion and how they had her fix her hair as the show progressed. And he felt like she was perfect to begin with, and she had the biggest smile on her face, and he just was like, he's going to do whatever he can to get that smile back on her face. So Holly's mother is being all nice and asking her if she's happy, and Holly's like, yes, and that, you know, they had a rough start, but her leaving and coming here was like the best thing for them. So then her mother was like, you walked out on him? You never walk out on a man like that. So Holly loses it, and it's like, if you found out that your husband had been married 2 other times, I think you would have freaked out too. So then her mother was like, oh, he's keeping secrets from you. That's not good. She's like, I mean, I should know, you know, I've done it a couple times. And so apparently her mother's been married 4 times, never even told a girl. So Holly yells at her about this, and then she starts crying and saying how bad of a person she is, and Holly falls for it and hugs her. Her mother leaves later that evening. Apparently she was going to go out with some of her friends, and she gets a delivery from a UPS guy, and it's a vibrator called the Executive, which Creighton leaves a note that says when she comes, she better be yelling out his name. So she calls Creighton right when she's on the brink of coming. How she's able to do that, I have no idea. I don't know how your brain thinks that, but okay. So he was like, are you okay? And she said, I'll be even better when I come saying your name. So then he starts jacking off and talking filthy to her, and he orders her to come, and she shatters, and so does he. So she tells him that her mother was there earlier, and that's why she couldn't talk. And he was like, shit, I shouldn't have left. But she was like, no, it was good. She thinks they're in an okay place. Creighton doesn't buy it, but he won't crush her like that. So he just says, you know, I'll support whatever you decide. So the next morning, she sees her mom is gone, and she gets a call from Tana. Shit has hit the fan. Her mom has sold a story to the tabloids about Creighton being married twice before. The reporters have dug up that apparently the first wife, which was Anika, she had told him she was pregnant, but she wasn't. And when she had found out that he wasn't getting any money from his uncle, she left him. So the story she tried to paint wasn't what it was, which I kind of figured, because you have no reason in approaching a woman about something like that if you're over it or whatever the case may be. Her doing that was because it appeared like this man was crazy about this woman. He's, hugely successful, and it was like, I messed up, so I'm probably trying to mess up what he has now. That was just bitterness, clearly. So then there's another article in the Wall Street Journal which talks about him buying homegrown records and the suit against him he's facing for doing the sale without the permission from the board. So Tana invites her to her house to kind of lay low. And her road manager, Chance, is like, get to Nashville right now and let's get this album out. Let's ride this wave. And she freaking screaming like, this is my life. And he's like, yeah, I know, but we need to ride the wave. So he told her that Boone offered for, his place up, that she could stay there and kind of hide out while everything is going on. And she leaves and goes to the garage, and she tells Logan, get a locksmith over to her place and have them change the locks, and tell the sheriff that if her mama comes again, have her locked up. So Logan tells her if she ever needs anything, even if she's in Nashville, just give him a call. So she decides she's not going to Nashville. She's going to go towards the storm. And so she heads to NYC. Holly shows up to his office and he was like, why haven't you been answering your phone, woman? Clearly she had her phone on airplane mode. It was funny because prior to her being on her way to New York, she had been calling him and couldn't get in contact. So then she gives him her whole speech about how she's there to support him, like, we're going to face this together. I'm not going to leave you here to deal with this, we're doing this together. She was like, I don't know why you didn't tell me about buying homegrown, but I know you have a reason for that, but again, we're going to face this together. So then they start kissing. Cannon comes in. He's like, we don't have time for this. You have 24 hours before you have to get in front of the board. And you saying that you married the first piece of ass and bought the company because you didn't like how they were treating her isn't going to cut it. Creighton flies over and punches him in the jaw and tells him he's fired. Holly was like, no, don't fire him. Make him apologize. And she told him, if you ever call me a piece of ass again, you'll have to worry about me knocking your teeth out. She then tells him, now you all figure this out because you're best friends and you have been for a long time. She's like, I'm going to head home. I'm going to cook us a home cooked meal. I'll see you later. So Cannon apologized to her before she leaves. And then Creighton is basically going to tell the board that it's his company. He'll do whatever he pleases. I said, damn. So she cooks him like a really nice home cooked meal. Fried chicken, baked beans, cornbread, broccoli, cherry pie. They don't talk about the issues that night. They talk in the morning as they both were like, we'll just talk about it in the morning because they just really want to revel in being with each other. So the next day they go to the Investors Day meeting and he speaks to everyone and basically just tells them that the reason he bought homegrown records was because it was a wedding gift for his wife. And he says, I understand that I should have run it past the board first, but he was trying to get it done before she would know about it. His uncle Damon is like, that isn't going to cut it, storms out. Cannon comes up to him. They have a little back and forth, and Creighton says he's going to deal with his uncle head on. So he heads to his uncle's penthouse in the city. He's not there. He's apparently in Westerly. So he goes there. His uncle's like, you know what? He's like, I don't know what you're here for. Nothing's going to change. And Creighton's like, I just want to know how much it's going to take for me to buy you out to get you off this board, aka shareholder. And his uncle tells him the whole story. He wants him to remove Karis from the name of his company because it isn't his brother's child. So apparently Creighton's mother got pregnant from a guy in the mafia. And she married Damon's brother. And the issue was Damon's brother, I cannot remember what they said his father's name was. I can't remember it. But anyway, Damon's brother was supposed to come and work with him in the business world. But when he met Creighton's mother, they got involved heavy in this church, and then they became missionaries, and they went to New Guinea, and then they wind up getting taken out. So he blames Creighton's mother, and Creighton is a reminder of this. And so since he can't have his brother back, he is basically going to torture Creighton for the rest of his life, because that will give him some form of payback. How fucking twisted can you be? Oh my gosh. So Cray knows at that point there's nothing else that needs to be said. You know, because there's just nothing. You can't reason with someone like that. That someone at that place is gone, and you're never bringing them back, you know? So he leaves. He comes back to the penthouse. He tells Holly everything that happened. Holly's freaking out too, because this sounds like it's something out of a movie. So then Greer comes over because her aunt had called her and told her what happened. So Greer was kind of like, oh my gosh, like this is really happening? You're my half brother? Then the door opens and 3 men come in. Now you got to think, this man lives in a penthouse. You know it has to have the best security. But these 3 men open the door and come into his place. One of them looks like an older version of Creighton, and he tells him his name is Domenico Casso, and yes, he's his father. I'm like, shoot. So apparently, the way that Damon got the information was the wrong way. And he was told that as long as he didn't tell, that, you know, he wouldn't have anything to worry about, right? But it turns out the housekeeper, her name's I think Elizabetta, she works for the Dom, and she was basically put in place to watch over Creighton, give, you know, the Dom, you know, updates and things like that. So she heard what happened earlier that day, and she let him know he's broken code. He's told him. So that's why he's here. I'm like, oh my gosh. So Damon is like, you know, he'll be dealt with, talking about Damon. And Creighton's like, I don't need that, you know. I don't need you to take him out, because that's going to fall back on me. And all I need is just his shares back. So that way the suit that he's filing, it can't move forward because he'll no longer be a shareholder. So then his dad, aka the Dom, says, consider it done. He tells him, we'll also let the wife know that she, you know, can't say anything to anyone else either, or she's not going to like how that works out for her. So because he had never anticipated on meeting the child, his thing was that he was just always going to look out for him. He did have the kid while he was married, you know, so he wasn't really trying to build a bond with him, you know. So he also tells Greer that she needs to stop being reckless walking home late at night, that his men have had to intervene a few times. And he's like, you know, we extended that to you because you're, you know, Cray's sister, and any harm to you would hurt him. So then Cray's like, yep, you're getting a bodyguard ASAP, and there's no debating it. So then after they leave and everybody's just like, oh my gosh, because this just doesn't seem real. But now Creighton and Holly, like, Creighton's like, listen, we're still going to Vegas, because they were going to go on a Vegas trip. He's like, we're still going. They go to Vegas, and the headlines read that the suit has been dropped as Damon is no longer the shareholder. Well, a shareholder. So the Dom was good on his word. So Holly plays the crap tables, and she's actually really good at it. And so she wins enough money that she can buy her own car. So when they get back to Nashville, he at first was like, oh, we get you a Maserati. She's like, no, take me to Ford. She wanted a Shelby. I was like, yeah, that's a nice one. So they haven't found a home just yet in Nashville, so they're renting like a penthouse. But he likes it in Nashville, and he's just happy that she's happy. They still do split their time between both places. We fast about 9 months later. She's receiving an award for that song "Lost on Fifth Avenue" for best song. She, and we find out that she's pregnant and she's having a girl, and she doesn't know it. But after tonight, Creighton's gonna take her on an actual honeymoon, which is gonna be to Bora Bora for like 3 weeks, no internet. So her mother showed up at their gates because they do now have an actual home in Nashville, and the mother was like begging for money because apparently the money from the tabloid had run out, and Holly said no way and told her leave. If she didn't, she was calling the cops. And I was proud of her for that because she realizes her mother really is just a trash ass person. Like, that shit's not changing. So after she wins the award, she runs into his arms, Creighton's arms, and she's about to cry. And she's like, I'm going to do an ugly cry. So he asked someone if they could, like, get a room nearby. And they go in the room, and she was just like, I'm just so happy. And, he just tells her that he's just so proud of her and how much she deserved this win, and that he was taking her away. And she was like, where? And then she's like, it don't even matter, wherever you're going, that's where I'll be. And that's how it ends. I thought it was super sweet. I really did. Couple of things that stood out. That ending, finding out that was not his father, like Damon wasn't his uncle, that was a shocker. That was a twist that I did not see coming. I was really shocked by that one. But it kind of shows you with the uncle how it was probably easier for him to just hate the child than to probably really grieve his brother. Because it seemed like it was just maybe a little too painful for him to deal with that. So it was easier to just hate on a kid, which is crazy that you can hate a child like that. But I guess his mental state, sometimes people get in their ideal, like, okay, this is what he wants to happen. Like, my brother's going to come work with me. We're going to build this amazing company. And then your brother changes the plan. And it could have been just to cover up a pregnancy, but I don't know. I think the brother probably really fell in love with Creighton's mother. And they clearly fell in love with being missionaries. And that's what they wanted to do with their lives. But I think, again, because Damon was so stuck on the ideal of them being in business together, he couldn't imagine that his brother maybe didn't want that life. Maybe the marrying her was a way for him to get out of it too, because he knew what was expected of it. I wonder if that was the thing with it. But that was super crazy. I liked it. I liked their intensity of how they feel for one another. I mean, the series would have been a lot shorter if they could have just said what they felt sooner. But I think because they were both emotionally damaged people, it was hard for them to really pinpoint and understand what they felt. But what did you guys think of this book, of this series in general? Drop down in the comments. Let me know. If you are looking for a wonderful, beautiful notebook that you can journal in, I have some on sale. The link will be down below in the description section as well. As always, make sure you like and subscribe. I thank you for your support, and thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.